Chapter 15. Court and Crown. Excerpt from the veiled petitions of Seraphine the Listener, recorded in the marble silence of the twinned lions beneath spires that pierce the breath of gods. Men kneel not to honor, but to survive. Thrones do not weigh the worthy, they test them, unmake them, remake them in silence and silver. And the crown's light, though brilliant, casts the deepest shadow upon those who stand closest. The palace of Vel Seren towered before them, its spires catching the last golden blush of afternoon, its banners rippling like flame across the wind. From the outer square to the central arches, everything gleamed, marble polished to a mirror sheen, gold filigree curling along balconies like vines, stained glass windows casting holy fire on the stones below. Kael's breath caught in his chest as they passed through the final arch. The scent of lavender and beeswax filled the air, curling around the whispers of courtiers moving like drifting silk. The grand receiving hall was less a room and more a cathedral. Vaulted ceilings of etched crystal, mosaics of old kings blazing across the floor, and pillars as wide as watchtowers. They waited outside the inner chamber, flanked by statues of Vel Seren's founders, warrior queens, philosopher kings, stone-eyed gods frozen in judgment. Kael, in a deep green tunic trimmed with gold leaf, felt suddenly very small. He smoothed his cuffs with the edge of one thumb, trying not to fidget. Kael swallowed hard. The halls of Vel Seren didn't just echo, they pressed, like walking beneath mountains carved by time and ambition. Every step forward felt less like arrival and more like surrender. Fergus, wrapped in flowing navy robes already smudged with ink near the cuff, muttered under his breath, "Why do noble sleeves need this much fabric? I'm drowning in dignity." Thorn, caught between his silk doublet and the rigid cloak of Ashen Tales, was pale and quiet. His hands moved constantly, tugging, smoothing, twisting fabric that wouldn't sit right. He looked less like a lord and more like a boy stuffed into someone else's legend. He tugged at his high collar for the third time in as many minutes. Garrick Dunehall, their quiet pillar, stood before them in ceremonial armor, his silver-plated breastplate engraved with the stag of Ashen Tales. His tone was quiet but sharp as flint. Chins up, hands still. Speak only when addressed. Refer to her as Your Highness. No jests, no charm, no improv. They all stood still, hearts thudding in unison. Then the creak of the doors broke the tension like a drawn bowstring loosed. Kael smoothed his cuffs with the edge of one thumb, trying not to fidget. Why is everyone so certain we'll flirt with royalty? Fergus grumbled back. Probably because we're fools enough to try. Thorn muttered under his breath, tugging at his high collar. When do I bow? Before she speaks? After? What if I trip on my own tongue? Garrick replied flatly, without turning. After. One hand to the chest. Deep, but not groveling. You're not asking to marry her. You're here to serve. The grand doors creaked open, the herald's voice echoing like a thunderclap through the vaulted hall. The herald's voice boomed like a thunderclap through the vaulted hall, announcing Lord Thorn of Ashen Tales, Master Kael of Cinderfeld, Fergus of unlisted lineage. The trio stepped into the court. The silence was total, thick as wool. Dozens of courtiers lined the edges of the hall, all in silks and satin, their eyes polished like glass. No one whispered, no one fidgeted. It was a room built to watch. Kael felt the weight of those stairs cling to him like a second tunic. His steps slowed, measured. He could smell the lavender still, but it had changed, more cutting than sweet. Inside, Princess Eliana sat beneath a sunbeam woven of glass and gold, flanked by carved lions and crimson banners. Her throne was less a seat and more a monument, framed by stone wings. She wore a gown of midnight velvet, threaded with threads that caught the light in swirls, like galaxies stitched into fabric. Her circlets sparkled with sapphires, but it was her eyes, clear, assessing, cool as glacier water, that made the room go still. Her gaze swept them like a blade. Eliana's voice rang out, light and poised. Master Kael of Cinderfeld, Lord Thorn of Estenvale, Fergus of ambition, no doubt. Fergus dipped into a too-deep bow, nearly tangling his sleeves. He righted himself quickly, grinning. My ma says I'm a gift. The world remains skeptical. Ripples of laughter passed through the assembly, subtle, constrained, the way nobility allows itself to laugh. Eliana's lips twitched, the briefest flicker of amusement. Then her attention landed on Kael. Her voice dropped into something colder. Eliana's tone dropped into something colder as her gaze fixed on Kael. You slipped tons of tobacco past my gates with my pendant. No license, no taxes, just charm and brass. His mouth dried. For a second, Kael thought of arguing, explaining. But he saw the steel in Eliana's eyes. This was not a negotiation. It was a line in stone. Kael opened his mouth, but she raised a hand. The air froze. Eliana raised a hand to silence him before he could respond. 20% of your shipment, surrendered in goodwill and loyalty. A steward stepped forward, bearing a satchel of official parchment, ink pots, and embossed seals. Eliana nodded toward Kael as a steward stepped forward. Secure your merchant's license by sundown. No excuses. You sell under my banner now, or not at all. Kael bowed deeply. Understood, Your Highness. Eliana's voice softened, quieter, but no less firm. My advisors, 67 in total, assure me your leaf is unmatched. If they're right, you'll be rich. If not, you'll be forgotten. Fergus leaned toward Kael as they stepped aside. That's a lot of advisors. You're the best pitch they've got. Now, Eliana turned to Thorn, her voice softening, though no less precise. Estenvale's name endures. Your family was trusted, once. The West needs that again. The words hit harder than Thorn expected. Not scolding, not suspicious, trusted. He straightened, not from pride, but from memory. His father's stern quiet, the way Salmar carried burdens without complaint. He didn't feel like a lord, but for one breath, he looked like one. Thorn bowed, more gracefully than expected, but his eyes flicked with doubt. Eliana nodded once and dismissed them with a wave. The doors shut behind them like stone falling into place. In the quiet hall beyond, Garrick exhaled. He adjusted his stance, just slightly, shoulders squared. Kael caught the shift and said nothing, but the faintest nod passed between them. Garrick's hand brushed Thorn's shoulder as they walked. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. Garrick's voice carried quiet pride as they exited the court. You held your own. That's more than most do. Thorn removed one glove slowly, staring down at his hand as if it had aged years since morning. Did she mean it, about Estenvale? Kael laid a hand on his shoulder, his touch warm and steady. She meant every word. You're not just some lost heir. You're needed. Fergus added, tone cheerfully irreverent. Merchants, lords, and now court darlings, God save Velserin. They stepped outside. Light filtered through the high glass, casting ribbons of red and gold across the polished floor. Kael paused at the threshold, letting the color settle across his boots like paint across stone. The barge, the fields, the frost, none of it prepared him for the quiet gravity of this moment. This wasn't just a court. It was a crucible. Outside, the courtyard bloomed with early spring, lavender, flame vine, and the scent of sea wind riding inland. Birdsong threaded the air, fragile and fleeting. Somewhere behind them, the great doors groaned closed. Kael didn't look back, but he felt it, the weight of being seen. The court had opened its doors to them, but behind those smiles and titles, the game had only just begun. The wind shifted. Somewhere in the city, a bell rang twice. Not for them, but it would be. Someday.